Ion is without a doubt one of the most versatile Titans available for play in Titanfall 2. Let's take a look at how best we can use her and how to be as effective as possible with her. Ion is based around a central energy pool. Indicated on the left side of your screen, this energy is what powers the majority of her offensive and defensive abilities. In lieu of cooldowns on the majority of her abilities, they usually just consume this energy pool instead. Per the multiplayer weapon stats Google document linked down below, Ion's energy pool is 1000 points, regenerating at 80 points per second, with a 0.2 second delay before the regeneration begins. It's going to take you over 10 seconds to fully recharge your energy from zero, quite a long time in a game as fast-paced as Titanfall. Let's start off with Ion's primary. The splitter rifle deals 80 damage per shot to Titans, dropping down to 60 at long range. It's inherently a little bit inaccurate, so expect to miss lots of shots at long range that just are going haywire and they're not going to the center of your screen. You can deal 25 damage per shot to pilots as well, meaning that you've got at least a 4-shot kill at close ranges. This drops to 20 at long range, which begins somewhere between the SMG and assault rifle damage drop-off distances. Expect a 5-shot kill more often than not when playing as Ion. Your DPS with the splitter rifle's primary fire does not feel all that great, to be honest. It's certainly better than nothing, but I honestly never really feel like I'm having the impact I want to have while using this weapon. The only real upside here is that you don't consume any energy to fire it, so it's really just a way to pad your damage numbers in between uses of your other abilities. Let's get into what gives the splitter rifle its moniker. When aimed down sights, the splitter rifle fires 3 shots at a time instead of 1. This still only consumes 1 ammo per shot, however you tap into Ion's energy pool to fire your weapon in this way, consuming 30 energy per split shot. When splitting your shots in this way, each one deals a maximum of 56 damage at close range. Multiplied by 3, you're dealing 168 damage per split shot if all 3 shots connect. Without the splitter lens, I would estimate that you're going to be doing about 5,000 damage or so if you spend all your energy on this ability, miss a few shots, and land a few critical shots in there as well. This is obviously going to vary wildly depending upon those two variables, so don't take this number to heart. 5,000 damage, by the way, is equal to 2 bars of Titan health. If you use the splitter lens, your damage values change even further. Your damage per projectile drops again, down to 44 damage each. A full 5-round burst from this Titan kit brings you up to 220 damage per 1 ammo spent, while not changing your energy consumption. Expect to deal much more burst damage to Titans when using this kit, as well as making it all but impossible to miss out on pilot kills. Like I alluded to earlier, however, it's my personal belief that the splitter rifle should not be your primary source of damage as Ion, and here's why. You have to expose yourself for very long periods of time to rack up the damage you need on enemy Titans, and with the lack of shields on Titans in Titanfall 2, your DPS is oftentimes going to be beaten out by just about every other Titan in the game. Laser Shot allows you to deal a large burst of damage very quickly and accurately, necessitating only the briefest of peaks before retreating back behind cover. Much like North Star, the majority of your time should be spent hanging back, abusing Laser Shot as much as you possibly can. With a critical hit, you're dealing over 2,000 damage per shot, competitively close with North Star. Almost too competitive. It might be boring and not terribly fun to play this way, but honestly, booping enemies with Laser Shot while not taking any damage at all in return is by far the best way to go if you're trying to maximize your Ion's lifespan. In a lot of the gameplay here, you're going to see me being a little bit more aggressive than what I think you should actually do. Most of the time when I'm playing and recording for YouTube videos, I'm also streaming, and thus I'm not paying as much attention to my positioning as I ought to, so work by my words here more so than what you see. Abusing laser shots is priority number 1 when playing as this Titan. Moving on to Ion's tactical ability, we have Laser Tripwire, dealing roughly 1,500 damage to Titans, with odd variants that I honestly can't quite nail down. This ability is dramatically underused by most Ion players in the wild. This ability consumes 350 energy when deployed, or 35% of your total energy meter. Compared to the 500 energy used by Laser Shot, this ability is technically quite a bit more efficient than Laser Shot if we ignore the potential for critical hits on Laser Shot. This is also the only ability of Ion's with a hard cooldown, so you unfortunately cannot spam it and litter the map with tripwires. The cooldown is pretty short though, so that is nice. So, What makes Tripwire so good? Well, for starters, the hitbox is huge, and I mean, like, it's absurd how huge it is. Pilots can soar really high above the trap by jumping off of walls and still die to it when it detonates. Despite the ability's name and visual appearance of an actual tripwire, it's not a tripwire at all. It's a proximity mine. When setting the tripwire down, they fan out at an angle based upon where you're looking. So if you look down at the ground, you'll cluster all 3 traps together very tightly. If you look straight ahead or even up a little bit, they'll all separate a little bit more. The range at which the tripwires connect seems to be infinite, as far as I can tell. All they need is to have a line of sight to one another in order to connect. If you don't have that glowing line connecting them, then they are inert and will only be triggered by enemy gunfire or the guaranteed explosion that happens when the mines time out. This explosion on timeout occurs within 2 seconds of tripwire coming back off of cooldown. In addition, Laser Tripwire is able to shut down flags and objectives in ways that no other Titan is able to do, making Ion a critical pick for locking down objectives in objective-based modes. Seriously, if there's a flag on the ground, friendly, enemy, doesn't matter, drop a tripwire on it. It completely prevents one of the 2 teams from interacting with it at all until they clear it. Very, very cool stuff, especially if you mix it in with electric smoke. Now, before we move on, I have one final note. The proximity of the 3 mines to one another does not practically affect their damage output. So in normal situations, excluding like the ones where I'm cheesing the ability by that big hole in Code Eye like I was just showing you, you're doing pretty much the same damage no matter the proximity of these mines. Whether they're all stacked or they're all separated, you're doing about 1500 damage, give or take. Next, let's talk about the Vortex Shield. If you played Titanfall 1, you know exactly what this ability is all about. Protect yourself from damage with the potential to return a little bit of damage at your foes. Vortex Shield is significantly nerfed this time around for a variety of reasons. First, because it drains your energy meter, you have less energy to spend on offensive tools. By investing in Vortex Shield, you have extremely low damage output as well as extremely slow core build times since you're neither dealing nor receiving damage. This is unlike Titanfall 1 where the Vortex Shield was on its own cooldown and was pretty much always beneficial to you. It can actually hurt you to use it in Titanfall 2. So in order to use this ability effectively, you have to be very smart with your timing and block only the most powerful of an opponent's abilities so you're not wasting your energy. For example, when fighting against Tone, use your Vortex Shield only to block its rocket salvo. Don't even worry about the 40 mil. Against Scorch, there's only one thing to block, his primary weapon. Don't bother using the shield if he's reloading, for example. To reiterate, you generally want to use this defensive ability as sparingly as possible, so you can reserve the majority of your energy for offensive tools, which are far more important. In Titanfall 2's Titan vs. Titan combat, the best defense is in a lot of cases a good offense, so getting that laser core up to shoo away anyone getting too aggressive is pretty mandatory. One fun extra note before we move into the laser core then is that technically Vortex Shield only needs to absorb a single bullet to be lethal to enemy pilots. As long as what you're absorbing is in fact hit scan, it will be returned back as a hit scan shotgun blast that will almost assuredly melt any pilot struck by it. If you absorb a projectile, it will also be fired back in a shotgun blast, but it retains its projectile quality, travels slowly, and spreads just as randomly. Unfortunately, the only Titan with a hit-scan weapon that's actually absorbable by Vortex Shield is Legion's Predator Cannon, so you're not going to be doing this too often, unless a pilot is foolish enough to shoot your Vortex Shield directly. Laser Core deals massive damage after a short windup and will rip apart a Titan almost as quickly as Tone's Salvo Core can. To avoid giving an hour-long lesson on why laser-based weapons in video games are not actually laser beams, imagine this instead. While the laser core looks like it's firing a single, continuous laser thanks to its visual effect, that isn't what's actually happening. You're firing a fully automatic, hit-scan weapon dealing 350 damage per hit with no drop-off range at a firing rate of 480 rounds per minute. Imagine that however you want, but mechanically, that's how it actually works. In addition, the laser core appears visually to emanate from Ion's chest. This is misleading, as every weapon in this game is fired from the player camera, which on Titans is located very, very near the top of the model. This means that in a lot of cases it will look just like your laser core is striking a wall or some other obstruction, yet you still get all of your hit markers and damage off of it appropriately when it doesn't even look like a laser is hitting the enemy Titan. This is just a limitation of how the shooting mechanics in Titanfall work, just as much as it was a limitation in Call of Duty, and is one of the best examples of the infamous head glitch that plagues many modern shooters. In summary, my advice to you is to not be fooled by that laser beam coming from your chest. It's misleading at best. Your laser core is firing straight out from your camera with a comparatively low rate of fire, but high damage per shot, and it's very, very easy to melt Titans with, so just make sure that you understand how it really works. Most of the time when using laser core, I try to wait until I have a dash ready before I activate it. You're able to dash during the core's windup time right up until the point it begins actually firing. Use this to your advantage to begin winding up the core behind cover, then dash out at the last minute in order to give enemies the least amount of time possible to react. As is tradition at this point, I'll cover each of the Titan kits briefly. As always, Assault Ship and Auto Eject are pretty bad ways of using your Titan if you're trying to actually win games, so I recommend very strongly against taking either of the two. If you're trying to play the game for atmosphere or just have a really good time with your buddy Titan, then sure, go ahead and take Assault Ship. But if your goal is to be the best player you can be, skip these two kits on every single Titan in every single situation. This leaves us with 4 viable options. Let's take a look one at a time. Turbo Engine is what most people are going to be gravitating towards, and honestly, it's really hard to blame them. Titans in this game are very slow in comparison to Titanfall 1. You don't have a shield as a health buffer in most cases either, so safely peeking becomes very difficult when you've got Legion, Ion, and or a North Star peeking your corners constantly. It might be arguable that an extra dash helps you peek more effectively, but honestly, I don't think it gives you enough value to really buff that playstyle enough to be really, really useful. The main use of Turbo Engine, then, is to give you a greater potential for big bursts of movement speed. When playing a slow, defensive style while abusing laser shot as your primary weapon, the extra mobility pretty much turns you into a slightly slower North Star, which is honestly not all that bad. It's definitely a fine pick, don't get me wrong. Next up, we have Counter Ready. To put it bluntly, you shouldn't ever need this kit on Ion. Laser Shot is quite simply one of the best pilot killing abilities in the game, and it's very, very easy to hit with. This, combined with your already very far back positioning with Ion, means that it's going to be extremely difficult for enemy pilots to rodeo you at all in most scenarios. Even if they do, turning a 180 and snapping them out of the air with either a laser shot or just punching them is trivial, so long as they're not running phase shift. As I discussed before, laser tripwire also has a gigantic kill radius, so if you sense an enemy pilot getting too close, drop a tripwire down early and stand in close proximity to it. Chances are pretty great that you're going to kill that pilot off if they're not running phase shift. Again, you honestly just don't have a big need for the extra smoke charges in my opinion. Nuclear Eject is a no-go on this Titan. You don't have the tools that you need to force an opponent to eat the nuke, and should honestly never be close enough to your target to use it anyways. Avoid. Finally, we have Overcore. This is one of my favorite kits for Ion. Earning faster laser cores makes you even more immensely powerful than you already were with this Titan. Laser core is very powerful and capable of tearing Titans to shreds with great speed. While it does leave you vulnerable, you'll have the health to manage just fine thanks to the super slow and safe playstyle that Laser Shot affords you. Plus the added benefit of getting electric smoke pretty much instantly after getting into your Titan for the first time is pretty excellent in and of itself. Combining this with battery boost means that as long as you get the first Titan down, you're all set to insta-give the first or second Titan the enemy team drops without any recourse whatsoever. Laser Core has got the same problems as Tone Salvo Core, and that if you drop your Titan out of position, it's just instantly dead to that one core ability, and there's like nothing you can do about it unless maybe you're Ronin. Honestly, one of the most broken, overpowered, unfun, and uninteractive things about Titanfall 2, this is a tactic that you need to abuse since the only counterplay is to work with your team to defend Titan drops really hard, which honestly is never going to happen outside of competitive play anyways. Let's move on to the Ion specific kits, as always, lightning round. Entangled Energy is a weird one. It's not a terrible pick, but it's not one which I personally gain a lot of value from with my personal playstyle. You can definitely improve the availability of your laser shot by using this kit, which is dope, but but the problem is that you have to actually use the splitter rifle and expose yourself for long periods of time, all while hitting a critical hit spot on a nearby Titan who's trying to avoid you and juke you while leading your projectiles. It's just too many variables, and with the splitter rifle's inherent inaccuracy, it's very, very unreliable. You might knock off 2 seconds from the laser shot's cooldown in most practical applications, which is nice, but I don't really feel like it's worth it, unfortunately. Next up, we have Vortex Amplifier. Again, this is another one that I think could be decent, but Ion's best playstyle honestly just doesn't support it. In addition, you strongly prefer absorbing hit scan weapons as opposed to projectile weapons, as we discussed earlier in this video. There's just not much hit scan for you to absorb and reflect back, short of an enemy legion. One thing I will say though is that this is pretty sweet against tone if you find yourself in a close range engagement. Absorb all the rockets and reflect them back for fantastic damage, and you'll be close enough to hit this particular reflect very consistently. Generally, I think this kit is overshadowed, but against Tone and Legion, it does do okay. Next, we're going to talk about Grand Cannon. I already gushed earlier about how great Laser Core is at dismantling enemy Titans, and this just makes that ability even more consistent. You can often kill off more than one Titan with the extra duration, so this is absolutely a favorite pick of mine in Last Titan Standing, where I can't take advantage of the bad Titan drops. This improves my consistency, while also enabling some clutch plays that allows me to annihilate groups of Titans in ways I otherwise could never hope to do. Moving on to Splitter Lens. Well, we already discussed this one a little bit earlier as well. It's solid, improves your consistency versus enemy pilots if you're unsure of your laser shot skills, and lets you nuke people into oblivion without actually needing your core ability to do it. This is really solid if you're not that great with laser shot, and I definitely don't fault you for choosing it. It's probably not optimal, but it's very strong for sure. We're going to finish off with 0-point tripwire, my favorite of the bunch. This lets you constantly spam out laser tripwires without interrupting your laser shots whatsoever. As we demonstrated previously, tripwires have a gigantic explosive radius and will very often get you random kills you were not at all expecting. In addition, at close range, you can drop tripwires right in the faces of enemy Titans, and they will explode almost instantly. This allows you to nearly reach the damage potential of Splitter Lens without having to actually use Splitter Lens. You get versatility and the potential to deal just as much damage as another damage boosting kit in all the same situations, so for that reason I really enjoy this one right now. This isn't to say the splitter rifle is wrong or bad, it's very good, I just personally prefer this one. Manage your energy well, be conscious of your positioning, and don't be afraid to be aggressive sometimes as well, as it's very, very necessary. Thanks so much for watching, and special thanks to Jably for helping me out with this guide. I hope that you guys have learned something new, and that the clips demonstrate solid Ion play. If you want to see a few extra Ion clips that are kind of a bonus, you can check the description box down below. I've linked a series of clips that Jably sent me that he feels also shows off Ion in a very positive light, so make sure you watch those to see how a different player approaches the same Titan. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.
I'll be stopping by myself. It's just random people from my network.